I live in a major city, Chicago. I live near the gay neighborhood. And, I know that there are repressed kids from the suburbs who discover their homosexuality and who want to march around in gay pride naked and defy their suburban conservative background and, épater la bourgeoisie, shock people. And I always joke about identity politics, that you wonder if people weren't whatever they are, black, gay, whatever, like if they woke up one day and were a black person was white or a gay person was straight, what would they do with themselves? Because they make it their entire existence, like enacting this thing. And but I think that, the thing with capitalism is that, what's the real unfreedom bearing down on my husband and on me? It's that he'll get laid off, that
Right.
he'll be thrown out on the street. Like these sort of more impersonal forces that you can't like put a cultural attribute to, and that really don't care about any of that, right? Like actual societal things, um, that are complex. And I feel like, well, okay, the way that system keeps going is to take all the pent up terror, frustration, fear, anger, and channel it in these cultural directions and provide like spurious cultural solutions that, to my mind, are pretty faddish.
Yep.
Like when I look at the last 200 years, I think, well, there have been these fads, you know, and, religion has come and gone as a fad. Sometimes it's in, sometimes it's out, right? And I can't help but think, okay, people in the neoliberal era and people right about now are finding religion again. And that's a historical symptom, meaning that wasn't the case like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So what's going on right now? And that's not to, again, I
But does
actually
it
think that the profound question, like theology, religion, existential questions, I actually think that, I'm not like anti-religion or something. I was asked at a panel recently, well, what about the bigotry that comes from religion? And I was like, yeah, I'm not so sure that it does come from religion, as opposed to any place else. Like bigotry comes from anything, any source, like, can be used to justify bigotry. I wouldn't lay it on religion. And that's why my anecdote was important, because I don't think, I mean, on the face of it, Islam is very conservative, Muslim countries are very conservative, but in reality, people are forgiving and accepting, and people live their lives, you know? So I hate the fact that it's turned into that, right? It's turned into a way that people can hate each other. Now, the other
Hmm.
thing is he's on, Muslim Instagram or whatever. And so I see the like videos like from the young Muslim preachers who are out there proselytizing and who say, if you're gay, it's okay. Allah made you that way, but you need to resist your impulses. It's a hate the sin, not the sinner kind of message.
Yeah.
You should resist your impulses the way I, as a heterosexual man, resist my impulses to cheat on my wife.
right?
And it's like, well, that sounds nice. But so there's just a lot of this out there, and I feel like I'm not gonna I'm not gonna approach that head on. I'm not gonna say, okay, well, that must be stopped. What kind of an evil message is that giving to people, struggling with their sexuality? So, you know, I guess I'm for shifting the register of discussion of these things and thinking about what's real freedom, what's false freedom, like not just becoming anathema to these ideas because they can serve pernicious roles, right? So kind of, legitimate conservative values are used for pernicious roles. Legitimate progressive values are used for pernicious roles in
Hmm.
capitalism.
Sure.
I'm worried about that. Like, in other words, what is it about our society that can make things liable to playing the pernicious role that they play?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with that. That's across the board. Things can be used that way. Like, um, can I ask you a direct question about a specific issue, Dave? Do you mind?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
no, please.
Um, like, how do you feel about surrogacy?
Surrogacy. Well, I mean, it's tricky, of course. Everything in capitalism is exploitative. At the same time, you know, should the state criminalize such things or even excessively regulate them? You know, like I guess I'm a libertarian at heart, meaning I don't think narcotics are good, but I'm not for criminalizing them. You know, like I think there might be existential questions raised by things like abortion, but I don't think it should be criminalized. You know, so it's one of
which
these things.
which
I feel
which
like,
I
you know,
I take to be a different question than how I would like to ask Chris the same question. I'm gonna slightly change it though. What
Hmm.
because there's your opinion, Chris, but then there's also for instance a new socialist party. Should that be a make or break issue for it, or wouldn't people in the working class be able to be divided on this issue and still be a part of some new movement?
well, that's certainly true. That is
Right.
definitely,
That's where
in
I
other
think we
words,
should always take it with a
right.
Marxist in a conversation, because like I don't care what Marxists believe personally so much as like if they want some kind of a new movement or a party, it's like, well, what would be okay within it? And
I mean, look,
I want
I,
to, well, let me just really quick, because I was hoping I could get this in here at
go
some
ahead.
point, and so
Yeah, yeah.
this is probably the point.
Hmm.
Um, in one of our earliest conversations, I had asked you on this point about cultural conservatism and the working class having its conservative elements, not as people are conservative. Obviously, it has that as well, but also human beings have conservative and liberal sort of different takes on different things, right? People are mixtures of these things. And I was bringing up, like, wouldn't a real party that actually is for a mass movement have people who are pro-life and pro-choice within the same movement, right? It wouldn't any real large-scale structural kind of change have to include people who are going to be split on issues like abortion? And you'd said yes, which is I take to be a very unpopular position in what
Well,
calls
because
itself
it's
the socialist
confusing for
left.
people. It's
Yeah.
confusing for people. So reproductive freedom is a complex question that can only be like posed in a very distorting way under capitalism. Right. So I would say, you know, Marxists historically, socialists historically, and I'm sympathetic, have been for reproductive freedom. And, you know, not just negative, right? But positive. In other words, the point being that people should be able to biologically reproduce when they want to. We, you know, we live in a society where children are expensive, where women have to make a choice between deferring childbearing till an advanced age when they need a lot of medical help to do so, and that's horrible, you know. Um, so, you know, people are not free, really, to make choices, you know, to be self-determining in that way. And so I feel like we should be very skeptical of the choices on offer under capitalism because they already accept a very constrained framework in which these things are posed. So again, like surrogacy like contract, you know, it's like, well, on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, well, but what are the social conditions? It's like prostitution. You know, prostitution is like one of the more horrific forms of exploitation, but criminalization of it hasn't stopped it yet. In other words, we have like sex trafficking, human trafficking, slavery, rampant exploitation on scales probably never seen in the history of the world in terms of pure numbers, right? But we have a lot of laws against it. We have internet surveillance of it. We have massive state apparatuses to fight it. Hasn't worked yet, right? So I'd be more interested in, again, changing the conditions under which that happens, but also in the meantime, not punishing the victims.